Hello, scholars. Welcome to our first Giver lesson. This is the handout for chapter 1 that we're looking at, and I'm just going to be explaining a couple things to you. So you can already see that this is obviously the chapter 1 analysis, and underneath that it says RL 9.5, because as Ms. Reyes explained in her annotation video, now that the state test, which didn't exist, is over, we are treating you like 9th graders to helpfully get you to the 9th grade for when you graduate. You'll be ready to conquer that new school. So today's standard is analyze how an author's choices concerning how to structure a text, order events within it, such as parallel plots, and manipulate time, such as pacing or flashbacks, create effects such as mystery, tension, or surprise. That create effects thing should be familiar to you. This is something that we have done multiple times. We talked about it with tension. We talked about it with wonder. Actually saw wonder in someone's thinking guides today. So that part's not new. But what is new is the complexity of the text and also this idea of ordering events. So we're thinking about the plot. To begin, you're going to summarize chapter 1 in a few sentences. Just 2 or 3 is fine. If you did excellent gists, all you have to do is kind of skim through them and then pick the couple most important ones and smush them together, and that part's done. Underneath that, where it says describe Jonas's setting and community, for that one, what do you think the society is like? What do you think it looks like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? How do you think it's ordered? Just anything about that. This is the exposition of the book, and you need to keep that in mind for this entire worksheet. Lois Lowry decided to reveal specific things in chapter 1 to give us some ideas of what is going to happen later on. So that's kind of what we're analyzing today, and setting and characters are of course always part of the exposition. Moving on down here, this is the actual handout that you are doing, right? So here it says complete the chart below, analyzing why Lois Lowry made these decisions as an author. So the first quote we're going to do together, it says, on page 2, it was almost December and Jonas was beginning to be frightened. No, wrong word, Jonas thought. So here, that is the opening line of the book. So I would say that this detail reveals, I don't know, we have to make an inference. So over here, I left a helpful comment that your inference can be something about the community or the society, or it could also be about the characters, or it could be about the setting. Again, this is the exposition section of the book. So we could say that this detail reveals that community members, that's wrong, or Jonas specifically, are self-conscious, you guys know I'm bad at that word, with their words. Okay. You could also frame it as they're careful with their language, because later on in the chapter, you guys have already read this chapter at this point, you know that they say something's about specificity of language, please. So we'll see that. Now here, the reader's feeling, this goes back to what we said earlier about creating an effect. So if we're thinking, why is this boy getting nervous about the words he's using in his own brain? That's weird, right? So the reader's feeling here, this is kind of a reaction to whatever's weird about that quote. Or maybe to use a less connotative word, maybe it's what's unusual or what's different about that quote. So here, I would feel unsettled because it's unusual. He's, policing his own thoughts. And I could also say that I'm nervous for him. I don't know what he's frightened about yet. Later on, of course, he's worried about the ceremony of 12. But here, he's nervous. Or excuse me, he's frightened, and that makes me nervous for him because I don't know if he's in danger or something like that. So here, this is where your 9th grade standard really starts to kick in. Why did the author decide to include this detail? We've already talked about this before, that every single word an author writes was put there on purpose. So why would the author decide to start her book with this line? It was almost December and Jonas was beginning to be frightened. No, wrong word, Jonas thought. It gives us a nervous feeling. It's revealing that people are self-conscious and careful with their language. Why would Lois Lowry do this? And the answer, get those blue sheets out, that blue sheet verb, is to reveal the citizens of this society don't feel safe, or let's say don't feel comfortable in their own thoughts. Can you imagine if you had these negative thoughts? You know, like, ooh, that's scary. And then you have to say, no, scary is the wrong word, blah, 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 right? And then, because we've already read the chapter, we know that this is also setting up that whole situation with the plane where they introduce us to the idea of release, where they introduce us to the idea that planes don't fly overhead very often or really ever, right? So this is also kind of setting up the plot events that are going to follow. So we can include that too. The author decided to include this detail to set up the explanation of the plane and to introduce Asher's lack of language skills. Because again, we've already read the whole chapter. We know that Asher does not, there's a motorcycle. We know that Asher does not have as careful of a grasp on his language as Jonas does. So having Jonas have this self-doubt thought also sets up the path for Asher to get introduced. So that is what you are working on today. There are 2 pages. There's 8 quotes total. Okay, and this is what you're working on. Please note it does say to be continued, so don't try to end early. I saw some of your annotations stopped after page 2. Doesn't work. I don't know why you try. When you're done with all of these boxes, and please note you might have multiple answers for particular boxes, and that's okay. At the bottom here, it asks you, overall, what is your first impression of this hopeful community? And this is a free write, again, expecting 3 to 5 sentences. And if the words hopeful community sound bizarre to you, that's because it's from our statement of inquiry, which you guys worked on Monday, right? So our statement of inquiry again is, individuals attempt to cultivate a hopeful setting by molding culture and character. So already you can start to think about, what is their culture like? Who are these characters like? How are these things coming together to make a society, right? So overall, this is the work for today. Again, all this is based on chapter 1 and should be completed after you've done your Kami annotations and you've read chapter 1 fully. Of course, if you have any questions, come to a live Q&A, comment down below, comment on Google Classroom, send me an email, send me a text. I got you. Welcome to Unit 5. Bye!